Ladies and gentlemen, Bryan Reuter.
Good morning. Morning, RFMA. How are y'all doing this morning? All right, it is my pleasure to be speaking with you here today. My name is Bryan Reuter. I'm in-house counsel, sales planning director, and all-around utility knife from my company, Global Bioprotect. Global Bioprotect is a privately owned company that developed a line of manufacturers, a line of highly effective biological cleaners to help combat fog and sugar throughout your industry. In our business, we work directly with the end user and establishments across the country. Now, I research and review water authority regulations all the time, almost daily. And let me tell you, no two municipalities are the same in any way. There are countless rules and regulations that encompass your ability to function and run your businesses. But we're only going to talk about a few of those rules for drains and grease traps today. We're going to focus in on three main issues. The first is the 25% rule, analytical limit testing, and product or practice prohibitions. Now you say, why these three? Because annually, tens of millions of dollars are spent across the country paying fines, treating wastewater, and paying the EPA. You heard me right. The EPA is fining the water treatment facilities the same way you are being fined at your establishments. It all runs downhill. The more the local authority must pay in fines, the tougher they are on each of you. For example, in one New York jurisdiction, grease fines can be upwards of $10,000 per day, whereas in Texas, they run from $400 to $500 and then $750 within the first 3 violations for the first 2 years. Now, how do you avoid this? Okay, let's begin with the 25% rule. What is it? It sounds self-explanatory, right? Not exactly. The 25% rule is not only a rule, but a general efficiency guideline. As you can see, the grease trap contains 3 major layers: grease, which is a floating fog, water, and sediment or solids. Now, when the floating and the sediment layers are added together, the total depth can not be more than 25% of the total depth of the contents. So if these layers are in excess of 25%, the efficiency and grease retention of your trap goes down and will allow fog to pass through into the public system. In most jurisdictions, you're now in violation and a pump out is required if you're in excess of 25. If this comes up during those random inspections that the city likes to do, you're going to ask to pump out immediately and prove that your trap was pumped. But rest assured that that local authority will be making those inspections much more frequently. This costs you money, and pump outs are not cheap. Generally, most jurisdictions require a minimum quarterly pump out, but I know several establishments, and probably you do too, that are pumping out as much as every 2 weeks. Now, would you rather only pump 4 times per year, or would you go for the 26? That's up to you. Well, what you put down your drains directly impacts what goes inside your grease trap. Do you know how the lowest frequency is in your jurisdiction? Is it biannually, quarterly, monthly, or do you have to do it weekly? If you don't know, you may be spending far more money on your grease trap pumpings than you need to. Now you're probably thinking, okay, how do they know how much is each layer of that trap? So what happens is a technician or an inspector comes out and they use a device called a sludge judge. As you can see, it's a multi-piece clear tube with a little float valve on one end and an open hole on the other. It opens with surface tension and closes by gravity. The tech will submerge this tube into the trap all the way to the bottom and then pull it back out slowly. Think of it like plunging a straw into a glass of soda, sticking your finger over the edge, and then pulling it back out. The tech then visually measures each layer with a ruler. It's not that hard. Now they calculate the fat percentage in your trap. The lower the number, the better. Ideally, you want it single digits, but it goes all the way up to 70, 80%. Now, like I said before, what you put down your drains will directly impact what sits out in your grease trap. Now, jurisdictions may conduct laboratory testing on the contents of your trap, primarily focused on biological oxygen demand, total suspended solids, oil and grease, and pH. The meaning of these and the process how they do it is irrelevant for today's discussion. Just know that this is happening at some point. Now, many jurisdictions have defined limits for each of those. And when tested, if your trap exceeds those values, you're going to be required to pump or you're going to get paid with a hefty fine. Let's take a couple of looks at some examples of a QSR in Texas. Now, both BOD and TSS had limits of 250 milligrams, and the sample values taken were 2901 and 519. When you factor in those sample values into the equation, you can see that that QSR was fined on a dynamic monthly recurring fine of $352 and some change. So dynamic meaning it going up and down every single month. Now, hypothetically, let's bump those values up with the same local limits of 250. Now the BOD is 16,352 and TSS is 819. You can see how your fine's going to jump up every month to $1,700. That's a lot of money a month. I mean, put that somewhere else. And to be completely honest, I've seen BOD levels in excess of 30,000 and just recently TSS over 50,000. So do you know what condition your trap is in? Do you know what your local limits are? If not, have you asked the water authority or tried to look them up? Since we've talked about grease traps and analyticals, let's talk about what you can and cannot do. Many jurisdictions have parameters or outright prohibitions on substances you can and cannot use in your fog to control fog in your grease traps. Let's take a second and look at these two jurisdictions. Do you notice a difference? In Baton Rouge, it's prohibited to flush your drain with hot water, but honestly, why would you want to? Whereas in Columbus, they don't say anything. Do you know what your jurisdiction says you can and cannot do? Are you violating your local code by deck brushing and rinsing with 150-degree water? Or do you have a strong cleaning SOP and drain treatment with an effective biological? Jurisdictions do this for multiple reasons, but mainly because water treatment facilities have their own SOP, and they don't want your process interrupting their process at your expense. A few questions to consider. Everybody think about this for a second. Are you being fined? How much are they? What are you doing to reduce those fines? How often are you pumping? Do you have those repeated plumbing callouts, line jettings, clogged drains? It's all money down the drain. Just remember, that piggy bank is right there waiting for you. Don't keep putting money into it. Remember how I started this discussion about the EPA fining local water treatment facilities. As an establishment, you ultimately control whether or not you are violating the rules and therefore getting fined. Understanding your local limits and regulations should only take a short time to look up. Don't wait around while you're cutting your first, second, or 40th check to know what they are. You can look them up on Google, Alexa might even know, or better yet, you can start on municode.com. It's an online free search engine that I use as an attorney that has municipality rules and ordinances. Now take this with a grain of salt. Not all of them are on there, but it's a great place to start. If you're having issues, you want to have a conversation, please stop by my booth, 213, and we can discuss your options, the situation, and exchange info. I'm more than happy to help. If you have any of these issues we've talked about today, just stop on by. I hope this discussion shed a little light on why you may be paying fines and how you can arm yourself with the information you need to avoid or lessen these fines. Thank you very much, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your breakfast, and take care. Thank you.